Is the United States economy starting to recover from the major decline caused by coronavirus lockups? Some new employment numbers were announced on Thursday and were very interesting. Many boldly report that these new figures are great news for the United States economy, but this greatly simplifies. By 2020, tens of millions of Americans have lost their jobs so far, and we have knew that millions of jobs would eventually return as COVID-19 restrictions were lifted. On Thursday, we received confirmation that millions of jobs have actually returned. Non-farm payrolls soared by 4.8 million in June, and the unemployment rate fell to 11.1%. As the United States continued its reopening from the coronavirus pandemic, the Labor Department said Thursday. No doubt this is good news, but at the same time, it seems that the numbers are not entirely correct, and we will discuss this a little more. But first, I wanted to point out that the main reason for payrolls to increase 4.8 million was the number of Americans classified as being temporarily dismissed by 4.8 million last month. At the same time, the number of permanent job losses last month actually increased more than 500,000 compared to the previous month. Another big contributor to the decline of the jobless rate was a plunge in those on temporary layoff. That total fell by 4.8 million in June to 10.6 million after a decrease of 2.7 million in May. The short-term jobless level fell by 1 million to 2.8 million. However, those reporting permanent job losses also jumped, rising by 588,000 to 2.883 million, the highest level in more than 6 years. This is absolutely bad news. Millions of people who were temporarily dismissed were expected to return to their former jobs. But what we did not expect was a huge increase in the number of permanent job losses. Now, let's move on to the ugly part of the numbers. On Thursday, we found out last week that 1.427 million Americans made new requests for unemployment benefits, and the number of unemployed workers making ongoing claims increased. The 4.8 million rise in non-farm payrolls in June provides further confirmation that the initial economic rebound has been far faster than we and most others anticipated, said Michael Pierce, senior United States economist at Capital Economics. But that still leaves employment 9.6% below its February level, and with the spread of the virus accelerating again, we expect the recovery from here will be a lot bumpier and job gains far slower on average. Indeed, a new unemployment claim remained stubbornly last week, and the Labor Office said in a separate report Thursday that more than 1.427 million Americans applied over 1.38 million estimates. Ongoing claims have actually increased from 59,000 to 19.3 million, highlighting the unemployed problem that was worsened due to the ongoing presence and economic impact of the virus. A healing economy doesn't look like this. In fact, these numbers are definitely abyss. I remind my listeners that this year's record for all new unemployment claims was set in 1982, when 695,000 Americans filed within a week. Last week's number was more than double this old record, and now we have doubled this old record for 15 consecutive weeks. Can American explain to me how the economy is recovering when Americans continue to apply for unemployment at levels far beyond anything we have seen in all of United States history? Overall, 48 million Americans have made new claims for unemployment benefits, in the past 15 weeks. However, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will make us believe that only 17.75 million Americans are currently unemployed, although the number of Americans making ongoing claims for unemployment is much higher than that. This point was perfectly voiced by Zero Hedge today. By its very definition, in short, unemployment is a subset of all Americans who are unemployed. In a Venn diagram, the continuing claims circle will fit entirely inside the unemployed circle, which also includes initial claims, continuing claims, and countless other unemployed Americans who are no longer eligible for any benefits. Alas, as of this moment, the definitionally smaller circle is bigger than bigger one, and as the DOL reported today, there were 19.29 million workers receiving unemployment insurance, and yet somehow at the same time the BLS also represented that the total number of unemployed workers is, drumroll, 17.75 million. If you said this makes no sense and pointed out that the unemployment insurance number has to be smaller than the total unemployed number, then you're right. And indeed, for 50 years of data, that was precisely the case. By putting out such ridiculous numbers, BLS is beginning to lose its credibility, and it's very sad. Meanwhile, fear of coronavirus causes some states to start applying new restrictions, and this seems to have caused United States economic activity to slow down once again. High-frequency data assembled by Federal Reserve officials, economists, cell phone tracking companies, and employee time management firms suggests activity slowed in recent days, clouding a strong United States employment report that may prove to have been driven by an exuberant start to the month as state reopened. Some of those reopening plans have now been put on hold, and new restrictions placed on the bars, restaurants, and other hospitality industry companies that help the United States economy add 4.8 million jobs in June. It was the second straight month of record employment growth reported by the Labor Department, and investors read it as a sign the United States economic crisis may be easing. Major stock indexes were all higher. In other words, we should expect the July economic figures to be pretty bleak. Currently, a new wave of fear is spreading across the country. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases has increased dramatically in recent days, and according to Gallup, more Americans than ever believed that the pandemic got worse. As coronavirus infections are spiking in the United States that previously had not been hard hit, a new high of 65% of US adults say the coronavirus situation is getting worse. The percentage of Americans who believe the situation is getting worse has increased from 48% the preceding week and from 37% 2 weeks prior. The latest results from June 22 to 28 are based on Gallup's online COVID-19 tracking survey, which interviews weekly random samples from Gallup's profitability-based panel. Last week, governors in many states paused or rolled back plans to ease restrictions on economic activity as states in the South and West dealt with a surge in coronavirus infections and hospitalizations. This means that economic activity will remain very depressive for the foreseeable future. If there is not enough income, more businesses will fail and more workers will lose their jobs. Many unemployed Americans cannot pay their bills, which will put a lot of pressure on financial institutions. The fact is that the economic outlook has not improved somewhat. If anything happens, it has deteriorated over the past few weeks. The fear of COVID-19 put us in a new economic crisis, and the fear of COVID-19 seems to keep us together in 2020 and beyond. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.